And to my left, we have a guest on the show today. His name is Donald Schmidt. He was raised in Dacula, I think that's how you pronounce it, Georgia.
Right.
He attended Georgia College, State and University, Georgia College and State University, yeah. He worked for Brian Kemp and Nathan Deal. He is currently works for a family-owned IT development company, and he is seeking the nomination for the Republican Party in the 103rd State House District. How's it going, guys?
I'm doing pretty good.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, you guys set up a very good energy coming into this, and that's a very strong introduction.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We worked tirelessly. And thanks for coming in. We wanted to have you in. We love to have people who are liberty-minded in. If you're running for office especially, most people, shocker, don't want to come in and sit down and have a long-form conversation about how they would like to get into government.
Oh, yeah.
And then their policies. And because I think a lot of times it just exposes a lot of fallacy in terms of what their policies are versus what maybe principle is, if they've got principle, right? And so thank you for coming in. Thanks for sitting in the hot seat.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things that I will give anybody a chance to come in and tell people what they want to do, and then also be challenged a little bit on where their policies might be in terms of our principles, peace and liberty and free markets. Georgia obviously does not have the reserve power to declare war or anything in terms of liberty. We've got some stuff to talk about. But Dacula, how long have you lived? I used to actually live out there.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, Dacula, right out there off of Harbins and New Hope out there. And so I'm pretty familiar with the area. You've been there for a while?
Yeah, so I was born in New Brunswick, New Jersey. When I was about 2 or 3, my family moved to Dacula.
Yeah.
So raised there my entire life. Went to school there.
Did you went to Dacula High School?
No, I did not. I went to Mill Creek.
Okay.
Which was really weird.
It wasn't around when I was in school, so.
Oh, yeah. Well, the weird thing was that Dacula and Mountain View were actually closer to my house. And Mill Creek was a 30-minute, 45-minute commute. And then, because of the way the school districts work, I ended up going to Mill Creek.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right on.
Very interesting. So you want to give us, I guess we should give a little background. We know Donald from Shane's campaign.
Oh, yeah.
He was in contact with us. But you want to give us a little bit of your political background, how you got involved, who you've worked for with, so forth?
So around 2012, I didn't know much about politics, obviously. And I saw this guy's name. It's such a mundane way of looking at politics, but I looked at this guy's name on the screen and said Ron Paul, and I said, I really like that guy's name. And then I ended up starting to look into politics, and I really liked the guy. So I said, I kind of have an interest in politics. This is something that I'm very interested in, at least talk about politics. Maybe not go into politics, but be politically literate of how things work. So years go on. I graduate high school, graduate college, and I ended up hoping to volunteer for this guy that was running for Congress named Shane Hazel. Mm-hmm. And the thing that impressed me was he was focused on the Constitution. And now I'm not saying this just to make you feel good,
right.
But he was completely focused on principle. He didn't care what someone in the head of the Republican Party was telling him to do. He cared about principle. He cared about the Constitution, freedom, things that he ran on. And ironically, a lot of the stuff that he ran on were instilled in me and things that I developed into my policies and things that I believe in as well. So then I had an opportunity to work for Governor Nathan Deal. Got interested in seeing how the state government works. Worked a lot with him directly. Then I had an opportunity to work for Brian Kemp. At that opportunity, I learned more about how the House works. I worked a lot with the House members.
Was that for Brian Kemp when he was Secretary of State, or was that after he took office as governor?
Yeah.
Okay.
And when I was there, I met this guy named Matt Gertler, and a very, very interesting guy, someone who is also completely focused on principle. And I noticed this trend where people who are genuinely focused on principle and focused on things like liberty, free markets, they were people that everyone respected. I mean, someone might not like the way you vote at certain times, but everyone had respect for their arguments and their beliefs. So now, I'm working in IT. And so, kind of that track record of, working for Shane for some time, meeting Matt Gertler, seeing how the House works, and understanding politics and policies and principles, I've come full circle to the point where I'm running for office, and I believe in a lot of the same things that Shane had believed in.
You still believe the same thing, Shane?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, principle does not change. My constitutional, understanding. I think it obviously moves us towards, towards the goals that I really believe in. In my lifetime, if we ever got back to a constitutionally limited government, I'd probably be okay. I feel like I accomplished something if I was part of that.
Yeah.
But like I said,
that's an understatement.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I don't think it goes far enough a lot of times. So with that, obviously Nathan Deal, Brian Kemp, they've both been through the political ringer here in the past. They're not the Liberty type of guys.
No.
What stood out to you? Was it hard to be in their offices to see what they were doing during those times here in Georgia? I mean, because I think Nathan Deal, in terms of tax increases and signing off on budgets and things like that, was not awesome. I mean, and really was pretty piss poor, to not mince words. He's obviously a big part of the establishment here, as is, I believe, Kemp. How do you do that? How do you stay in these offices and work for these guys who are doing things that are fundamentally against principle?
Yeah. So what my intention was at both those offices was to gain more experience in government and how politics works. I wanted to learn from members of the House. That's what I did a lot with Brian Kemp. I spent more times with members of the House than I actually did with the governor. We did have differing political views, but oftentimes people who work for people in government oftentimes have differing political views. So I utilized that opportunity to, gain more experience and understand more about politics than just from those people that I was actually employed by.
So what were like your daily activities? Because I've worked at the State House, but I'm a little bit of an outsider, I say.
Yeah.
I just see what happens, and there's definitely nice people down there, and you can interact. But on a professional basis, I'm just there to read bills and tell people that they all suck. So my daily and this is where I'm getting to. My daily thing was I sat down at a computer and I read all day and took notes.
Component of my day at during both those governors was that I took notes about the bills that were resolutions that were going to be passed or that were passed. With the Governor Brian Kemp, I spent more time working with the legislator, a lot of time with a lot of Gwinnett Republicans, just being updated on what they were going to be doing, attending committee hearings, things like that. With Deal, I was much more of just an assistant, spent a lot of time with him directly.
Very cool.
So let's get into policy. I mean,
I'm ready.
You're running to be a quote unquote lawmaker.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's a big deal in this day and age. We've got, what I consider is an out of control, assembly here in Georgia.
Oh yeah.
And so one of the big things for you is education that I've seen. And education, it's a huge thing for me, man. I'm a homeschooler.
Oh yeah.
And
I like that. I have a lot of respect for that.
It's one of those things where I have a major problem. You want the government to absolutely abandon Common Core altogether.
Yeah. So I was looking at this statistic a few days ago, and it said in 1979 the United States was ranked first in education across the
world. In some poll, yeah.
And then we made the Department of Education, and
at the federal level,
I think we're 34th in the world. So, I look at Georgia. Georgia's ranked right now, I think, 42nd. That's based on graduation rates, based on test scores, GPA. So we're ranked 42nd. And we've jumped every single year for about the last 5 years. And we adopted Common Core in that time. And the states that did not adopt Common Core are doing far better than Georgia. And what Common Core does is, first off, it takes education away from parents and students and teachers, and it replaces that with federal bureaucrats. And then the amount of money that it costs, I saw another statistic from the government that said it indicated that approximately from 14% to 26% of all the money that goes to Common Core is wasted.
Yeah, I wouldn't. That would definitely. Yeah, that does not surprise me.
That surprises me either.
So, I see a lot of Republicans that run, my opponents specifically, they run saying, I'm going to get rid of Common Core. My first day in there, I'm going to get rid of Common Core. They get in office, a bill goes up for Common Core, and they don't vote on it. Or maybe they don't show up to work that day.
Yeah.
Why does that happen? And that was something that I really noticed a lot when I was working in the house, where a lot of these guys, and I would always look at their campaign websites to see what they believed in or believed in, and I would look at their campaign websites and I'd say, you believe in all these things when you're running, but as soon as you get into office, you don't believe in any of them.
Well, how effective can you be, right?
Yeah.
I want to be effective, so I'm going to hang out. I'm going to take votes I shouldn't take because somebody senior to me is telling me to do something.
The prevalence of that was remarkable.
Well, it's everywhere.
The amount of times when I would ask them, I would say, why are you voting for this? And without any hesitation, they'd say, oh, this guy said too.
Yeah.
What's going on? You have, 5,000, 20,000 people you're representing, and you're not voting on this because of those people that voted for you and got you this job. You're voting on it because someone in the Republican Party leadership told you to. That was when I really noticed that there was a massive problem, and that was one of the things that brought me to want to run.
Okay, so I've got a two-part question.
Yeah.
I like open-ended questions myself.
Oh, that's
first question would be on a practical level, and I don't really like the practical things. What would be something you do to make education better? And then if you were like the king of the world, what would you do? So your perfect solution and your practical solution.
Yeah. So with Common Core, first day in there, I would like to repeal it. Get rid of it. If there's a vote on it, I'm voting against Common Core. If I was the king of the world, I would just get rid of Common Core.
So are you dropping a bill? Are you sponsoring a bill to sit there and say this is no more Common Core?
And I understand the hesitation with a potential freshman representative writing a bill, but
no better time. No better time to establish yourself.
What hesitation would that be?
Well,
so people understand, because some people might not understand why there would be hesitation.
Oftentimes in government, freshman representatives, freshman senators, congressmen aren't allowed to write or sponsor bills their first year in office.
They're definitely discouraged.
Yeah, but discouraged by who? The leadership. They haven't done anything for me, so they don't own me. They haven't done anything for me, so I'm going to write this bill to try to get rid of Common Core to try to better education. If I was the king of Georgia, hypothetically.
Not that we want a king.
No, I know. I could not. I don't think I could be in a room with two guys.
And Donald Schmidt's, what do I call it? Picture perfect land, right? Picture perfect.
That's a better way.
Fantasy land.
That's a better way to articulate it. What I would do is I would just simply have a meeting with teachers, parents, students, and see what they develop. What the issue is it went to government lobbyists who wanted Common Core, and that's who wrote the bill. It was lobbyists. The federal government wrote the bill. It had nothing to do with teachers or students or parents. So I would just simply get together with teachers, parents, see what they want. And what it appears to look is we want localized control. We want, if we can have state control or local control, either of those two are far better than federal control. And we want to be able to allow teachers to utilize their abilities to better our students. What Common Core does is it says, okay, you have to teach every single student the exact same uniform way, and you can't use any of your unique abilities to teach these students. So it almost removes teachers and replaces them with a textbook. And that's not helping students at all. And we could see that on data regarding test scores or graduation. So in Donald Schmidt's picture perfect land, he's getting rid of Common Core the first day.
Right on. So I'm going to follow that up with even more and tougher questions, because I think there is I don't know how familiar you are with a guy named John Taylor Gatto. I don't know if you're familiar with the Skip College, the guy that wrote, I cannot remember his name.
What are you talking about?
I think he's one of the Tuttle twins that wrote it. Anyway.
Connor Boyack.
Connor Boyack. These guys that talk about unschooling and getting rid of government indoctrination, I think it's one of the greatest flaws the American people made back at the turn of the 1900s, right? Mm-hmm. And we went into, from very locally controlled, mostly, where parents and communities, if, a kid didn't want to take up the trade of his dad, he went and found somebody else in the community, whether it was a blacksmith or whoever, to learn a trade or skill from. As homeschoolers, we're stripped of money by force to feed into this, what I'll call a government indoctrination system.
That's all you're saying,
would you ever drop a bill that says, or introduce a bill or co-sponsor a bill once you're down there to absolutely remove the homeschoolers' burden of supporting this government indoctrination system that we absolutely abhor?
Oh, so the taxes that you pay into public education.
Yeah, I mean, they basically come to me every year through property tax and say, you've got to fund this nonsense.
Yeah, the property tax seems to be an issue with a lot of people that I talk to.
I think it's most people. I think it's one of those things that both Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, you name it, people who are not politically involved do not support it. I mean, obviously, it's rent on your land to begin with.
I'm not sure that I agree with that, because they obviously support it. If there were enough people who didn't support it, it couldn't really exist. I'm
going to challenge that later. Not in the show. What I'm saying is I want to challenge that.
Yeah.
I wish I could, but I think it is maybe... so I guess we could ask Donald, do you think that taxation in general is fair, a necessary evil, the best system we have? Like, where would you put that thing? That thing, taxes? In order to have a country and a government, you have to tax. That's the unfortunate truth of the matter. Okay.
So you have to tax, and that's just how civilization has worked since we began, living in cities and tribes and things like that. And I understand that, taxes suck. Mm-hmm. I want them as low as possible. I wanted to eliminate as many as possible.
Income tax, property tax, eliminate them?
Eliminate the income tax. Is that not the worst constitutional amendment that we have?
Yes, but I mean, is that would you want to eliminate both income and property tax?
Yeah.
So for me, get back to education real quick. I believe it's a violation of a right of association. Obviously, the Ninth Amendment is what delineates all rights to the people. It says anything that is not enumerated in the Constitution, it is reserved to the people, right? So I have a right of association that the Supreme Court is upheld right of association for a long time. So when we take and we first of all, we take the money to procure a government indoctrination system, and then we hold these kids who are at 4 or 5 years old conscripted into a school. You can't sit where you want. You can't talk when you want. You can't study what you want. You can't do any of these things what you want. You can't be in the teacher's class that you want. You can't do any of this type of things. Yeah. This is a right of association problem for America.
Yeah. Well, the system that we got set up regarding education, I actually had a meeting, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago, with a group of teachers, about a dozen teachers. And the first thing that they said was, this is remarkable, because when politicians meet with the teachers, they're meeting with the lobbyists for the teachers. Mm-hmm. And I met with a group of teachers, and they said, we wish we could have more specialization in school. They all believe that we need to have a class that pertains to financial literacy. The amount of students that graduate high school and don't know how to fill out a check, the amount of students that graduate high school and don't understand, how do I file my taxes and pay for that? That's remarkable to me. It cultivates a group of people that don't understand how to, maintain, credit scores, maintain their money the proper way. So a lot of teachers were in favor of that. They were also in favor of, more specialized education in certain fields. Mm-hmm. A student that has no interest or understanding of science, if they want to be a lawyer, why do you have to take 4 classes regarding chemistry? I've seen that a lot from teachers as well. So
because you have to be a well-rounded individual.
Yeah, you have to be a well-rounded individual.
Mr. Schmidt.
So I'm going to push you on this, because what I want to know, first and foremost, are you in favor of removing the conscription that the government has on the people of Georgia? That's my question. Is it a yes? It's a yes or no question. Would you stand and say, listen, if you don't want to be a part of the government indoctrination system, you should not have to be a part of it. You should not have to pay into it, and you should not have to send your kids to it, and you should not have to answer to the federal or to the government at all for how you educate your kids.
So this is what, in support of homeschool?
In support of parents' rights.
Well, yeah. The way that you formulated the question, I would support that.
You support absolutely removing all conscription in terms of taking force and removing it from government for the ownership of your kids' education.
Well, the articulation of the term conscription could be a bit loaded.
No, it's not. I am coerced. I am coerced into force.
The practical aspect of the conscription would be right now that they take money from force for you for a service they're not taking, and then if you're a homeschooler, you have to ask permission to homeschool your kids.
I follow what you're
You have to
saying.
jump through hoops.
I follow what you're saying.
And I'm asking the kings and queens, right? I am asking the government.
Yeah.
Can I have permission to do this with my kids?
Yeah.
So I imagine for I'm not a parent, but I imagine for a parent it might be annoying, and annoying is the simplest word I could use to have to ask somebody else permission to educate their kids. Like my parents homeschooled me at one point, and they absolutely did not ask the government permission because, my parents are like that. That's why I'm like that. But I imagine it might be annoying.
I like the saying that free men don't ask permission.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to ask permission. That's not a free country that you live in if I have to ask permission from the government on how to educate my children.
But there are some people who disagree and who say that we need to protect children. So I guess on what side of the argument would you?
Yeah, I mean, no, I follow both of your thought patterns. It makes perfect sense to me. I think the only thing regarding that is people would say,
how do you make sure that these people or the parents are educating their kids? And homeschool kids actually do far better when they get to college than kids that go to public school. I have a lot of friends that have been homeschooled, and they're brilliant kids. Your kids are homeschooled, and I think the most well-behaved kids I've seen. When I walked to the house, they were perfectly behaved. But I think the only thing when we talk about this topic is I think they just want to make sure that your kids are actually being schooled and educated, and you're not just having your kids do whatever they want during the day and not learning anything.
Okay.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I don't follow that at all. There's nobody else's responsibility on this earth that has responsibility over my children.
Oh, yeah, I follow you.
So you're in full support of parents' rights to go tell the government to jump in a lake. You have no control over what I do with my kids unless I am absolutely doing physical harm to them.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Okay, cool.
I'm good with that.
I'm very passionate about.
No, I can tell. I can tell you're very passionate.
We're talking. We're talking about the basics of restoring the understanding of who owns what. Do you own you, and do you own your kids in terms of their rights in escrow? Yeah, absolutely. It is a definite. If we don't start understanding that as Americans, and we don't start pushing back on this out of control. Hey, listen, my wife was a teacher in public education, right? I get it. Like I've seen it. I've been part of it. I've seen the nonsense that she has to deal with through bureaucracy. On top of it, I still see people who are leaving this government indoctrination system, in droves now here, especially in Georgia, because it's just gotten so tyrannical. That's so you'll co-sponsor or sponsor bills to put forth that in the language.
You have to get specific.
Kids specifically, we do not. There is absolutely no conscription.
A kid doesn't have to go to public school?
He doesn't have to. The parents don't have to send them to public school. They don't have to answer to the government for homeschooling.
Yeah, I think the issue. Well, I know the issue and the reason that the way it's set up right now. Now, granted, it should be far easier than it currently is, and I think what the topic would have to be is just to ensure that kids are being educated in homeschool. Could you see the slippery slope?
But you tell me. Like I'm going to sit. No, I can't, because what I see today is I see government indoctrination taking kids in where there are pedophiles, where people are sexually molested all over the place, and then the outcry is at the homeschoolers. Well, what do we know that they're doing? What are they doing over there? We have to ensure that they're safe. They're not safe at school. They're not protected.
Well, the world isn't safe.
Exactly.
And that's just a fact.
And that's what I'm saying.
And so taking the default that the government system is intrinsically safe would be
safe.
just as false as saying that a homeschool environment would be intrinsically safe.
Yeah.
The world isn't intrinsically safe.
Well, what I'm saying
and
is
this confidence we have in government is misplaced.
I think for the most part with homeschool, in terms of safe, and you look at scores, the scores for homeschoolers are off the charts compared to government indoctrination. The rates of abuse are rock bottom compared to the rates of abuse, and that's not just teachers. That's also students and bullying and everything else. The fact that we have not secured campuses.
If your kids, you're not really going to have like one of your kids bullying the other, and you don't know about it.
Yeah. Hey, my sister bullied me all the time.
And
I was the older one, so she got to do it and wouldn't get in trouble for it.
And it's going to get dealt with in a positive way.
Yeah.
You also have to look at the time, the infrastructure, and everything else.
Yeah, I follow you.
It's so much more efficient for these people in private industry to take up education, not schooling, education, than it is for the public to pay into these indoctrination centers that don't get people ready for life. And really, for me, waste the time from the time you're 5 years old until the time you're 18 years old. Those formative years should not be run by the government. That's insanity.
I mean, I wouldn't say that public schools are just terrible and they're the worst thing on earth, and that anyone who goes into them is going to be the litany of things that you illuminated. One of my public school teachers in high school is the reason that I'm interested in politics. She's the one that instilled in me this belief that, I'm maybe a capable speaker, maybe I'm good at debating, and debating might be a good way to go into, politics might be a good thing to go into. So
it's not the teachers that are bad. That's not my argument. Okay. It's not that all teachers are bad. Okay. Obviously, I married one.
Yeah, and I know I would not dumb down what you're saying.
It's what I'm saying is it's not that the teachers are the bad. It's a system that is predicated on force and coercion that is evil to begin with. Nothing great can come from that. The potential that we lose, the lost opportunity potential that we lose from government education and government indoctrination has stifled innovation and development in this country and set us back, I would say, probably at least another 100 years in terms of freeing, the human condition. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm getting at. Do you agree with that?
I mean, that long dialogue of that, or the monologue of that?
I'm just wondering, what do you take contention with?
Well, I mean, I just think that, public schools do a good service for kids who whose parents are not able to offer the time to homeschool a kid.
Okay. I mean, it's a fair enough statement.
I support public schools. I learned a good amount of public school. Now, granted, I think that, the things that we talked about preceding this regarding getting rid of Common Core and things like that would be a great benefit to the state of Georgia. And every single state that currently employs Common Core should get rid of it. But, I think that for someone to be homeschooled or go to a charter school or private school should be as easy as it possibly can. So on that side, we agree. But I think
you still want state control over the parents. Then you want us to answer to the
it
state.
Should be more localized.
He wants a different level. I mean, I think that's been pretty much.
That's what most people believe. Well, that's what I mean.
So that's an interesting question, actually, and I don't mean to get away from the subject.
Yeah.
I'm gone.
It's not that I'm not passionate about education. I think it's important, but when you mentioned before, you're like, okay, these people represent, I think it's like 55 to 60,000 people, and they're doing what the lobbyists want. Mm. And then you just said that's what most people want. No, this is not a criticism.
Oh, okay.
Though I have many criticisms in general, but this is just a question.
Brilliant.
So if you are a representative and most of the people in your district said they wanted something, would that be a categorical way that you would vote even if you disagreed? How would you kind of navigate that territory?
Well, I mean, the two tenets and I talked to Matt Gertler a lot about this, and we kind of share the same belief on it, is the two tenets that you have to do when you look at any bill, law, resolution is it constitutional? Will it raise taxes?
Okay.
Will the government be more intrusive into your life? So if it passes both those things and the people support it, that's brilliant. If there was a bill that said, for example, if it said, to get rid of the First Amendment, and a majority of the people in my district believed in that. Now, that's not true, but just hypothetically speaking.
How about we choose one that's more probable? Because that's probably not going to happen.
No, civil asset forfeiture.
Something that might be easier for people to struggle with. Let's say that one group, you guys are going to laugh, I hope. One group wants there to be no forced conscription for schools.
Yeah.
And one group says, no, we should have some kind of reasonable government standard or government check to make sure the parents aren't just teaching their kids about Fortnite all day. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. Keeping it light. So let's say that most of the people think that there should be no force there. So you don't have to sign a piece of paper and you don't have to pay, but you believe there should be a standard. And there's no real constitutional basis to force that unnecessarily. What side would you err on? Because your personal belief is that there should be some kind of reasonable standard, but most people believe the other.
I would try to begin a dialogue with those people to understand their points, and potentially I would be swayed in their belief. So that would be the way that I think state legislators and people, in the United States Congress should also go about doing things. If you have a minority belief about something, you should talk to the people and understand why, you guys have differing beliefs. And oftentimes you can arrive at the same conclusions, or your beliefs can be a little bit altered. So that's what I would start by doing.
Okay. Let's go to guns, because I like guns. More than education, because I'm just well, that's not funny.
Banks has never believed in education, in the education system, I should say.
Yes, well, that is correct. Let's say that 90% of Georgians, we'll keep it to Georgia, want to ban fully automatic guns, right? Right now, you can have fully automatic guns. There's just a long process to go through, a lot of money to spend. And where would you go on that one? Because there is some kind of constitutional bearing there, even though the Constitution.
No, I might be incorrect on this, but are fully automatic guns not already banned?
So you can get certain
you have to have
licenses.
Class 3. You have to have FFL.
So it's not completely.
You
banned.
have to go and ask permission from the overlords at the ATF and their bureaucratic cronies, and you have to answer all the questions correctly. And if the Crown signs off on the peasants, want to go out there, then they will permit the owning of things like suppressors or short-barreled rifles or fully automatic weapons.
I follow.
So I've shot a bunch of fully auto. So there is a way to have them legally.
I think Shane's probably shot a few guns in his time.
Once upon a time.
Yeah. Well, the military is a whole other aspect of that. So if let's say 99% of Georgians are like, hey, all guns can be legal except for these ones, which is a statement that's contradictory in of itself. What would you do there?
Well, I mean, I think if 99% of my constituents believed in something that I didn't believe in, I might be out of touch. And I mean, that's something that we're experiencing in the 103rd district right now. First off, I mean, we got Common Core. Majority of my district supports getting rid of Common Core.
Okay.
We have things like bringing the healthcare to free market. We want less illegal immigration. Obviously, we want to find ways to deter crime. And the person I'm running against hasn't followed what a majority of the people are believing in. And that's something that I think, perfectly correlates with yours. And I'm not trying to dodge the question.
I'll wait for the answer.
No, I figured that you guys were about to call me out.
No, it's that I don't like. We didn't do any prep or anything.
Yeah, I would try to understand why they believe in what they believe in. Why I would hypothetically be so terribly out of touch with so many of my constituents. I think that, however, the bill would violate the Constitution. So I would not vote in favor of it. And then I'm sure someone would run against me on that one topic alone.
It's like, if 99%, I guess you probably would have an opponent.
Yeah.
What do you make of the statement that all gun laws are tyranny?
Yeah, it's perfectly spelled out in the Constitution. There was a story. I might butcher the story, but during James Madison's presidency, this gentleman who was a shipping merchant was sued by the government because they believed that he had too many cannons on his ship. And James Madison said he should be able to do whatever he wants to protect himself from the government, from tyranny, from enemies.
Who sued him?
It was, I think it was the New York State Legislature or something like that.
Huh,
it was the government that sued him.
I don't even know the story. That's a cool story.
They thought that it was a naval ship because of the amount of cannons he had on it, and it wasn't. It was just a privately owned merchant ship. So I follow that concept. Our founding fathers believed in it. James Madison himself wrote the Constitution. So that's the way that I look at it. You should be able to, preserve yourself as much as you need to protect yourself from tyranny, from the government, or from enemies.
The right to self-preservation.
Yeah.
One of the first natural rights.
Okay, so you would say that we currently have gun laws that are unconstitutional.
Oh, yeah.
At the federal and state level.
Oh, God. Some states abuse it terribly.
So as a legislature, you're going to co-sponsor HB 2? Was it Gertler's constitutional carry bill?
Well,
you're going to co-sponsor that?
Me and Matt talk about that all the time. Yeah.
Yes, you're definitely co-sponsoring it. Right on.
It'll be a new bill next year, so people don't get confused.
And then
HB 2, if you're listening to this,
was last year's, yeah. It hasn't been introduced yet.
It changes every 2 years.
Yeah, so now, you're on board with that. So, and then in terms of, I want to go and buy a suppressor from Banks. I can buy a suppressor. I don't need an FFL here in the state of Georgia. You're cool with that?
I don't know what the acronym for FFL is.
Federal Firearms License.
Yeah.
Yeah, I followed that thought pattern. That makes sense.
Okay. I want to go and buy an automatic weapon from Banks.
I don't have an automatic weapon. What are you talking about?
hypothetically, he's got an automatic weapon. I want to buy it from him. I've got some dollars. He wants my dollars. We do an exchange. Totally cool.
Yeah, I followed that.
Okay, right on.
Cool. So we'll go into this because we've talked about the constitutionality, and I agree that all gun laws are unconstitutional because it is spelled out. And you said that you didn't like the 16th Amendment of the Constitution, which is the income tax. Is there anything else in the Constitution that you think is
outdated?
We'll use. I don't like outdated. The truth doesn't change. We'll use subpar.
I mean, apart from the income tax, it would be a bit difficult.
There doesn't have to be anything. I don't like the United States Postal Service, for example, which is in the Constitution. But that's just me.
Which constitutional amendment is that?
It's Article 1,
it's not
Section
an
8.
amendment.
It's Article 1, Section 8.
Oh, I'm just thinking pertaining to.
Oh, we're talking about the
constitutional
whole.
amendments.
The whole Constitution.
What's listed in terms of the delegated powers to the federal government.
No, yeah.
The amendment that sucks is the one that gives women the right to vote. That one just.
Oh, Banksy.
God. The 19th Amendment, that's a bad one to oppose.
Well, it's not our demographic on the show anyway, right, Banksy?
There's tons of women who
I
who
get
listen to this show.
a lot of, I think a majority of my supporters are women. So,
I think,
to say
like,
that.
I don't know how you can say that, Shane.
What's that?
Like I think half of our patrons are women. I would imagine half of the people
Did you guys say the 19th Amendment's the worst one?
Yeah, that was a joke.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna say.
Okay, in case you're just as I don't know, dense as these two. I don't mean that in the.
Oh man,
like that was a joke.
Impenetrable.
I mean, I think the Constitution is a perfect document, and I think
really perfect, absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. How? I mean, you don't have any problem with the government still owning a post office that runs in debt by the millions and takes.
Well, I mean, it's not in the Constitution for the post office to run in debt.
No, but I mean, that's the
government can have a post office that they want.
But the private sector can do it much better, much more effectively, and we're not conscripted by the government to have forced tax dollars taken and given to it, right?
We should keep a post office.
We should.
We could disagree with that.
That's,
okay,
that's fine.
All right, I'm just wondering. You say it's perfect. I'm just pointing some things out.
Now in the Constitution, obviously the way I follow what you're saying, where it doesn't literally spell out the Constitution. We should have a post office, but
no, it does.
Yeah. Yeah, post office, post roads.
It doesn't say that it should like run in debt as it does and get subsidized and annoy us with their little, I don't know, vans that are really ugly in my personal opinion.
Gosh.
But
I was following one of those. I was driving behind it on the road, and I don't know who was driving it, but he would come to a hard stop, and there's almost a pile up of car accidents every single time this guy would stop on the road. That's a problem.
Well, yeah. So when you have people who lack a lot of price signals, meaning there's no owner who cares about really the vans or trucks, whatever. They're not cars.
Let's call it a van. Yeah.
Let's call it a van. Then you've got employees who don't care, and the employees might not care in the private business, but there'd be a boss who would say, "Hey, if you keep on like giving us a bad reputation on the road, or if you keep on slamming on the brakes to where there's more cost, then I'm going to fire you." And that doesn't happen as much because, in my opinion, it is not subject. Well, not in my opinion, it is not subject to free market forces as it should.
For those in our audience and you guys, it's 187 in the Constitution. It's to establish post offices and post roads.
Okay.
Right. Through force and coercion.
What's the next subject we could? Hold on. How about what are things that are important to you, Donald? Top of your head, and then we'll.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll
break them down until you're wrong.
Yeah, brilliant. We went over education. Education and healthcare are the two things that I find very important. And then decreasing taxes and decreasing government spending.
How do you do that?
How do I do which one?
How do you decrease taxes? Like I said, income tax. You want to get rid of the income tax in Georgia?
Never vote for an increase in taxes.
That's
the way you do it.
Do you ever sign on to a budget that doesn't decrease the overall budget?
No.
Never.
No.
Okay,
that's the overwhelming problem, though. I was talking to Matt Gertler a few days about this and the omnibus spending and the way that they, collect all of these different parts of the government into one. Mm-hmm. And they always say that we're going to spend less money, but then when you actually look at the interest and things like that, when you go into debt, we spend far more money. I mean, the government spending has increased every single year, and just also in the state level, but the federal level, obviously.
Yeah, we're further and further in debt.
Yeah. But the only way you can do that is have someone that says, no matter what, I'm not voting for an increase in government spending. And what an increase in government spending does is it puts it onto the generation following this, and it just increases taxes in the long run as well. So I would never, under any circumstance, vote for an increase in government spending.
Okay, so what if the Republican caucus that you would be a part of tells you, hey, so Georgia had 10 million people last year. These are fake numbers, people, so I don't go into the details. We had 10 million people last year. This year we have 11 million people. So if you calculate that each person
spending per capita,
per capita, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And so there's more. It's a bigger budget, but the same per capita. Would you find that an acceptable explanation to vote yes?
Well, I mean, the logical thing that you were pointing out, I mean, that makes sense, but I would not support increasing government spending.
Okay.
Anything that went past the amount of revenue that we brought in, that's unacceptable.
Would you support anything that even supports the status quo? The status quo is if last year.
Let's say it was its exact same budget.
Same budget this year as last year. You going to support that?
Increasingly be decreasing the budget. Increasingly,
we should decrease the budget every time.
Increasingly, decreasingly. I think that's a term. I mean, it makes sense.
I mean,
makes sense in
the
my
way
brain.
I said it, but
it works for me.
I think grammatically it's correct.
Okay, so what could make you vote for the budget? Like, not the current budget as it stands, but what measures? Like, by how much would it have to be decreased? Like, if they said, "Hey, we'll decrease it by 0.1%," if it was me, I'd be like, "Are you like trying to make fun of me?"
Well, don't patronize me.
Yeah, don't patronize me.
I saw that in. I think they want to decrease the income tax by 0.08%.
So it's 0.25. So last year they reduced it by, I believe, 0.5.
Yeah.
And then automatically in 2020 they reduced it by 0.25.
Yeah. I mean, we should be decreasing it by hundreds of millions of dollars.
Okay.
All right. Hot button question: do you support Ralston as Speaker of the House or not?
No.
Absolutely. You're signing on to the group up here. I guess David Clark is the sponsor of the resolution that would get rid of Ralston.
Yeah. And, well, yes, to answer your question, yes. And to elaborate, the gentleman that I'm running against, ironically, he said that the reason that he voted in favor of David Ralston was so that David Ralston wouldn't have someone primary him. And because he voted in favor of David Ralston is another reason that I'm running.
Right on.
I mean, what David Ralston...
I didn't necessarily get the comment. He voted in favor of David Ralston, so Ralston wouldn't get an opponent?
So that Ralston would not give him an opponent. I mean, you can see the trends.
Okay,
Right.
Everyone that votes against David Ralston gets a primary opponent.
Sure. Yeah.
A well-funded primary opponent.
Well,
Did he say this publicly or privately?
Privately.
Okay.
Yeah, right on.
Are you allowed to say who you're voting against? Who you're running against?
I don't see the benefit of saying his name.
Oh, right.
You only know. I mean, right now you only know my name, so that's as good as it gets. You know?
That is actually what I would.
All press is good press, right?
Yeah.
So no, I get it.
That is, if I were to like advise a candidate, that was not a bad answer, but I would say, oh, he's just some guy.
Yeah.
Nice guy.
I've got tons of questions, Banks. I mean, high level, cannabis in Georgia. You support medical use?
Yeah. Did you see the advancements we've made regarding medical marijuana in Georgia?
We've barely.
Oh my God.
We're such a. I think we're archaic in our.
So what the state legislator has right now. I'm banging on the
Yep,
table.
that's all right. Everybody does. You get passionate and we start banging tables.
So, because this is a perfect example of how the government works.
Mm-hmm.
So they quote unquote legalized medical marijuana. Now, in the state of Georgia, you can't distribute, sell it, or manufacture it.
Mm-hmm.
So for all intents and purposes, medical marijuana remains illegal in the state of Georgia.
Sure does.
And then if you get it from another state and cross state lines, and that's an even bigger penalty. So yeah, medical marijuana needs to be legalized in the state of Georgia.
How would you do that? And do you think that legalization is the best? Do you give any credence to decriminalization as the best?
Yeah, decriminalization also makes sense. I mean, we talking about the Constitution, we had prohibition, and that proved to not work. It proved to increase crime, and this quote unquote vice that people had wasn't as big as a problem as politicians said it was. And in the long run, we realize now with perfect hindsight that prohibition was a bad idea, and the war on drugs is a terrible thing that we have going on right now. The people that are in prison, some people are in prison for over 20-year sentences for possession of marijuana.
There's people in jail for life for possession.
For cannabis, yeah.
I'm not trying to, but at the federal level, there's certain politicians that people like called Ronald Reagan, who
Ronald
passed.
Reagan, Nixon.
Well, yeah, others too, but
And-
Ronald Reagan specifically, because people think he's.
And then you have Joe Biden, who's running for the
So
Democratic nomination right now, who supported the whole prison industrial complex, the crackdown on crime in the early 90s or something like that.
Was that with Bill Clinton's crime bill? I think it was.
Yeah.
So how would you, and you don't have to go into like details, but the main framework of how you would legalize or decriminalize or both?
First of all, legalize
Cannabis in
or decriminalize.
I would decriminalize it.
Not legalize.
Well, now the states that have legalized it, I mean, there doesn't appear to be the problems that people believe that there would be. So, I think what Colorado ended up doing was they decriminalized it, and then there was basically a waiting period, and then they ended up legalizing, and that tends to be the trend with nearly every single state. So I think that's a really brilliant way of going about it. Marijuana, the health side effects that politicians incorrectly note is not consistent with any research regarding medical data, and I don't see it as bad as something like methamphetamines or heroin, which is it's often related to. So when people say,
Schedule 1.
Yeah, that was a better way of saying it. I didn't want to get myself wrong and say something incorrect. But I mean, I think decriminalization is it makes perfect sense. The city of Atlanta did it. And, people say, oh, God, if you decriminalize or legalize, everyone's going to be walking around smoking weed everywhere you go. And, I worked at the Capitol. You walk outside, there's no one running. There's not just groups of people walking around smoking weed.
So they have bastardized the term decriminalize a little bit in that it's not actually decriminalized. They'll say, and there's nuance for every situation. I don't know the exact details for Atlanta, but what they'll do is they'll say, hey, we're not going to enforce this anymore, and we'll only do a civil penalty. I don't know if you guys hate having speeding tickets. I do.
I hate them.
But that means it's akin to a speeding ticket. You still have to go to court and pay like $100 fine or something like that.
They still reserve
That's not
a power.
decriminalizing it.
How often do you two get speeding tickets?
I used to get them a lot more often than I do now. That's for sure.
I haven't gotten it in a year and a half, but it does happen.
What kind of car did you have?
I had a really nice 95 Z28.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
I've got stories, but
I could get a speeding ticket in anything. Give me a beater, I'll get a speeding ticket.
as soon as Banks gets behind the wheel, I'm beating the ETA on that Waze app for sure.
But so just to go more in detail on that. Sorry, Shane. I know
That's
I'm
all right.
cutting you off. I just don't want to get away from this. Do you think that cannabis should be viewed more as a prescription drug is, or more as a tomato is? I'm not trying to be opaque.
No, that
So
that is a really interesting question.
Decriminalization in its real definition that they have bastardized means it's just like anything else. It's like mugs. Like there's probably like a government stamp on here somewhere.
Oh yeah.
But and tomatoes too, actually, sadly. But do you get my question?
No, I follow your question, and that's a brilliant question. I've never heard someone ask that question, so this is the first time I'm answering that.
If you don't know, feel free to say like I don't know. Like I don't want to.
Yeah.
Force you to.
I mean, I
say
don't
one way or another.
understand the different. To be honest, I don't understand. I'm not scared to admit it. I don't completely understand the complexity of regulations that I assume surround both of them. Obviously, prescription drug would have far more regulations around it. But yeah,
You could say you lean more on one side or the other as well.
No, I don't think I would know which one to select because I understand. I could see the benefit of either one. But I would not know how to answer that.
Okay.
Fair enough.
No, I mean, if I don't know the answer to the question, I'll admit it.
Yeah, no,
I'd prefer that than
some
something up.
BS.
Yeah.
I definitely prefer the hey man, I'm not sure. I don't know yet.
Yeah. Well, so there's a I'm not going to say it, but there's another radio show that I was on, and someone called in and asked me a question, and I said, I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
And then another person called in about 10 minutes later and said, I have a lot of respect for that guy for just being honest. Because I've seen how politicians will give these pointless, obsolete answers about something they have no idea about. So that's something I attempt to stray away from.
Constitutionally speaking, in terms of the federal government, do you believe the federal government has a power to ban anything? And where and if you don't know this, like I asked this because Schedule 1, drugs, prohibition, in the 20s, I guess 1920s when we went through prohibition.
Prohibition, yeah.
What did they have to do for that? They had to put forth the amendment, right?
Yeah.
And so they didn't have that power, which was an admission, right? And so to reintroduce or I should say cancel prohibition, they had to introduce another amendment.
Yeah.
They didn't do that with cannabis or any of the other drugs. So
No, they just did it.
My question, my question is that for that reason is, in terms of the federal government, is there room in your mind for the state of Georgia to completely nullify things that they have taken, away from the people?
Yeah, I would. It makes perfect sense for the state of Georgia. If the federal government has a law like that we don't approve of, other states have done it. There doesn't seem to be massive problems pertaining to that. So, I would support Georgia if they were to do that. That makes perfect sense to me.
How would you react if what's something you nullify as a priority for you personally? Like I would nullify NFA, which is National Firearms Act laws. So that's the things that cover suppressors and
I think
guns.
something like marijuana would be something that I would support if the state nullified.
Okay,
that federal
so
law.
let's say you wrote the bill. I'm not keeping you to that, but you wrote the bill, and the lawyers at the Capitol who help you write bills give you your bill back, and attached to the front of that, there's a little piece of paper that says you're trying to nullify federal law. The federal law is the supreme law of the land. They're wrong, by the way. This can be seen as treason, and we advise you not to drop this bill because you can write a bill and then you drop it. What would your reaction be?
How cool would that be?
It's not that hard.
No,
just to say.
but I mean,
if you use the word nullification,
what
they usually
what
that
lawmaker in Colorado or California was arrested when they passed their laws pertaining to marijuana?
Probably none.
Yeah, no.
I mean, they don't pay ever.
Yeah, so
So I wouldn't say that there are different. I'll correct myself. There are different types of nullification. There are nullifications that are good, like they're an advancement towards liberty that say, hey, cannabis is now legal under these regulations in our state, and there are other ones that would state cannabis is now legal in our state under these regulations, or preferably lack thereof. And if the federal government tries to hurt anybody or enforce federal laws or so forth, we'll take those federal agents and put them in jail. Which is a good example for California. While cannabis was legal in some form or another in California, and Barack Obama was president, he under the jurisdiction of the federal government was putting people in jail, federal jail for cannabis. So that level of nullification is usually what will get you the little advisement, hey, don't threaten to put federal people in jail. I had another question. I can't remember.
I have a question. So it's on the same strain here. So as the industry will start here in terms of cannabis in Georgia, it's going to start. Like we have people who are growing it now. They've already visited these places that are obviously selected and handed down by the Georgia government. Okay. So my question is should the people who are in the government be able to tax cannabis before everybody who is in prison or jail on non-violent cannabis crimes is released? So in other words, should people be making a profit on this at the state before we release and expunge the records of people who are out there?
Yeah, I think people that were arrested for, possession of marijuana, completely non-violent crimes, they should be let free.
And you support, you would support a piece of legislation or put it in a piece of legislation that said, listen, as Georgia, we cannot take a cent until everybody who is in the prison industrial complex in Georgia is released and has their record expunged that's nonviolent for this offense.
Yeah, I like the idea. I think we may have already passed that, though. I think, the state of Georgia...
We didn't pass
there's no
something
sales yet.
No.
Yeah.
No. I mean, like, perhaps the state of Georgia already made money from the selling.
I mean, so they have the cards now, the CBD cards. So I guess the government did make money off that. I think part of that question is strategic, and while I like the idea, I'm not sure I would make it contingent on that. Like, I don't like people being in jail for nonviolent crimes whatsoever, but attaching the two, great strategic idea. I might get behind it, but if there was a bill alone to
I
say
follow what you're saying.
it's going to be decriminalized or legalized, I might still vote for it. I don't know.
Well, it's a step, right? I mean, it's a step.
Both are steps. I'm not sure which one I would get. I'd probably get behind both, and I'd prefer the one where we had kind of leverage and say, hey, we're not going to pass unless you do this. I'm just not sure that all the leverage is there.
Yeah.
And you were asking Donald, so sorry that I answered.
Well, no,
I hadn't thought about that.
If I ever have a tough question at the Capitol, I might just call Banks.
Yeah.
He'll give an articulate answer like that. But yeah, the way that he formatted that makes a lot of sense to me, and I would support the way he just said that.
I shouldn't answer questions for guests. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I just find it pretty repugnant that the state that has made money on incarcerating nonviolent criminals is going to continue to make money on people who are now selling it in industry. And
I think it's completely disgusting. I mean, it's happening in Colorado right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
It boggles my mind.
Yeah.
I'm sure it happens in other states, but there's been a bunch of articles about Colorado specifically.
I want to move on to civil asset forfeiture.
I'm good with that.
It's near and dear to my heart, obviously.
I'm still trying to remember. I had a great question. I was like, I'm going to let Shane do one more, then I'll do that one.
Civil asset forfeiture, you're familiar with it?
Yeah, that's I was filling out a YAL survey, Young Americans for Liberty.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the questions on there.
So you're seeking YAL support during this?
And I actually, I think I left you a voicemail, but
Okay.
I didn't want to Google it, so I just wanted to see what you had thought about it. And unfortunately, you didn't answer the phone, but I ended up coming to potentially the same conclusion that you may have.
Well, which is?
Now, for civil asset forfeiture, it does not make any sense to me why. So the way a legal proceeding works is, let's say someone gets arrested for a crime.
Yep.
The way that the government does it currently is they can take your finances, they can take anything on your property, and they can use that. Now they can take that from you. The issue is that the way that it was originally done, and that is constitutional, is the government can only seize the fruits of the crime. So if I steal a diamond from a jewelry store, the government can only take that diamond, so they can utilize that for evidence. That original interpretation of civil asset forfeiture makes sense. The way that they've abused it today, where they can take any amount of your property that they want, that's terrible. That's repugnant, and we need to do away with that.
So you would agree with most of what the Supreme Court said like 2 or 3 weeks ago, where they overturned quite a bit of what civil asset forfeiture is. They said civil asset forfeiture is completely unconstitutional.
There was I was reading a report about someone in Georgia. I think he got arrested for I don't think it was marijuana. I think it may have been heroin or something.
Yeah, drugs.
But he had his vehicle seized. He had all of his financials seized. He had a whole bunch of stuff in his house seized.
Violation of the Eighth Amendment, for sure. Violation of the Fifth.
The Supreme Court case that brought this forward stems from a guy who they caught him for cannabis, I believe, and they took his like $60,000 Range Rover.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't law enforcement and judges, it's very easy to understand what the fruit of the crime is. So it's not up for interpretation. Like if I were to steal Shane's shirt, now I think
sure
I know he would put up a fight, and I'm not gonna
people that need shirts, I'm gonna give them the shirt off my back.
But if I steal that shirt, the government can't go, I don't know if everything in your bank account may have had something to do with that crime. It makes perfect sense. You just the only thing that you can seize is the thing that I stole. So the original interpretation regarding civil asset forfeiture is what we need to follow.
So follow-up question, and this is a more esoteric question, okay? In terms of your philosophy, I think it's important as legislatures to kind of understand your mindset.
Yeah.
Can you define what crime is for me?
What a crime is?
Yeah.
Well, something that violates a law.
Well, that's pretty broad. So,
but a crime.
Let's just say no. I mean, like,
but a crime is pretty broad.
But what is your definition of a crime? I mean, is that your understanding? Is hey, legislatures and everything that they do, they make a law, and it's a crime if you violate those legislatures' laws.
I mean, just to give you kind of not even a philosophical answer, but just the interpretation of what a crime is. A crime itself is a broad idea. And a law is also a broad
what
idea.
What is your interpretation? What is crime?
Crime is something that an action that violates a law.
So
I'll if you don't mind, I would.
I'm just making it open ended. I don't want to put words in his mouth.
I'm not trying to do what I did earlier and answer the question for him. But so I'll ask: if I were to roll a joint right here on air and smoke it, would I be committing a crime in your opinion?
That's technically a crime. You're violating a law.
So would it be wrong?
No,
what
I
I'm
don't.
doing?
I don't support the idea that that is a crime, but it is a crime. Just to point that out. I'm sure if you Google what a crime is, the definition of it.
So,
and what I'm saying is gonna be congruent to one another.
So, in your definition, then what really accounts for crime is, I guess, a better question. What is really a crime?
What a crime is
because if you don't consider him, having a joint.
No, he says it is a crime per
It's
definition.
It's a crime
but he
per the
doesn't think it's
definition.
wrong.
He doesn't think it should be a crime.
Of course.
Right. So, what do you think should be crimes in general? I mean, very high level. What do you think really constitute a crime through Donald Schmidt's eyes?
What constitutes a crime?
Yeah.
I mean that is. I mean,
What should be
with respect,
what should
that's-
be criminal and what should not be criminal? Me smoking a joint on air should not be
Yeah.
criminal.
And Donald Schmidt's perfect. Perfect world.
But with respect, that's the most vague question I think I may have ever been asked.
No, I don't think most people. I don't think most legislatures. I ask it because I don't think most legislatures have ever
Think about this.
considered
No, that makes
what it
perfect
is,
sense.
right? And then they go down there and they write legislation, and
Yeah.
it has ramifications that they don't even understand, right?
No, I follow what you're saying, and I kind of like these kind of like philosophical feeling kind of interrogatives, but technically,
Interrogatives. That's a cool word. I like it.
technically, what a crime is
Not technically. What do you think?
What do you think should be a crime?
Well, I
like
mean, that-
if
but
you
it's-
had if you were again the king of the world, we're going to say this time, and you had one philosophy that could establish all the things that you would make illegal, like murdering people, raping people, that kind of stuff. What would be that one philosophy?
I mean,
is that the question, Shane?
Yeah.
Perhaps it's going to be so vague that it may not be sufficient, but to an extent that anything that takes or damages someone else's property. So, it could be something as big as murder. That's, I guess, taking a life.
Murder's a crime.
Taking a property. Yeah. Stealing, robbery, burglary, assault. That makes sense. Financial crimes. Kind of, what is it? White collar crimes. That makes sense. You're stealing someone's finances or committing fraud.
That's still robbing, right?
Yeah.
Like you're injuring a person's property.
Yeah. But I mean, if we have to list off what every single crime is,
No, I actually think the answer is not that bad.
You're on. So, and I asked that because I have a belief because I've defined this for myself.
Okay.
And I think you're on the right track. Is what I'm saying is murder, assault, kidnapping. Rape, taking somebody's property through burglary, robbery, vandalism. Those are what I define as crime.
kind of the Lockean thought of life, liberty, and property.
No victim, no crime.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of.
Well, that's a non-aggression principle, and that I agree with that.
Do you now in your legislating, like you win, right? You're down in the Capitol. Are you ever going to support legislation outside of that to criminalize people?
Again, I mean, a very, very broad question.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
no, I know. I mean, it would depend exactly what the case is, and that has to be a case-by-case principle. I think it would be a bit difficult to say.
well, it's not case by case because you're
the whole
making
thing
legislation.
It's the whole thing is do you think that main idea, which might sound broad,
But the non-aggression
but
principle.
is very distinct,
Yeah.
could be applied perfectly to every action you take. That's all.
Yeah,
And
I
so
mean-
some people do believe that there are places to make a compromise. Like there's a compromise and say, no, we should have the government make sure that kids are safe and not being taught only to play Fortnite or whatever silly idea could come up.
Radicalness.
So there are people who say, hey, we need to compromise for these other, we'll call them values we have, which is safety or whatever. Or would you be one who would say, no, this principle of whatever should be applied 100%, I guess.
I mean, I would follow the non-aggression principle, but I can understand times in which this very broad topic, it could, you could differ a bit on your interpretation of certain pieces of legislation or ideas.
Okay.
Fair enough.
I did look up the definition of crime, and even though I would define it in
Differently.
well, I would say it's not a crime for me to do that. But Webster's or this is Merriam-Webster, yeah, says it's an illegal act for which someone can be punished by the government, especially a gross violation of the law.
Yeah,
So
so-
per that definition, yes, but I do disagree with that definition.
I passed the test. Thank you.
Well, if your standard is Merriam-Webster, which
Yeah,
That's where
that's come a long way.
I get most of my political ethos from Merriam-Webster.
Yeah.
let's do a little bit more because we seem to be butting our heads against the broadness of ideas. So let's get some specifics. What do you think about tobacco and the age on which you're allowed to decide you want to smoke tobacco?
What is it, 18 right now? Or is it 16?
Boy, I don't know. I didn't smoke when I was
It's
18.
18 in Maryland. I believe it's 21. What's your opinion on that?
I mean, I guess it's fine. Well,
That it's 18, or would you prefer it be like Maryland where it's 21?
18 would suffice.
Okay.
I don't think this was as interesting as the question as you made it out to be.
That's what I mean.
Bex
that's fine.
cares more about smoking than I do.
Yeah.
No, I don't even smoke. Like I don't even know how to roll a joint. Wink, wink.
Wait, you're just talking about tobacco.
I am. There are counties in Georgia that do not have liquor sales on certain days.
Yeah.
What's
It's
your
usually
opinion?
on Sunday.
Yeah, Sundays. Some places it's Saturday. Some places
can't do it before
There's
noon.
a few counties in Georgia where there are no liquor licenses.
What's the county Statesboro's in? I know that.
Yeah,
States
you know what's
around.
funny is when I was going to school out of West Georgia, Carrollton or Carroll County was a dry county too, and we have to drive over
Yeah.
the county, the imaginary
And then
line.
there's some that
to
are
go to-
semi-dry where
Well,
you can buy beer, but you
not
can't
liquor.
buy liquor.
But the funny thing is that the liquor stores are always right on the county line.
Sure,
I like
county
that.
line liquor store.
I think that's
it's the
very
most
funny.
prevalent name of every liquor store in America.
So your opinion?
You know, if a liquor store. Oh, this is about the local government.
Well, it's local government. It's whatever. I'm trying to not give you the answers at this point. 'cause
You know,
I've been doing that.
I wouldn't force a liquor store to open their doors for all hours of the day, every single day of the week. If that's what a local government believes in, and you know the business owners aren't remarkably upset about it, then you know, I mean, hypothetically, you know. Now I don't know this because I don't own a liquor store near a dry county, but you know, potentially someone might say, you know, I approve of that, and the whole entire county might be in favor of it, and you know, that's their right to do so.
Okay. Tariffs.
Yeah, I believe in tariffs. Now, Georgia, I don't think in tariff, but the United States as a whole, it makes sense to me completely. Now, I like free trade, obviously, but additionally to free trade, I like fair trade. And if a country is utilizing its economic and monetary policies to kind of cheat the United States, then you know I believe the United States should be able to utilize tariffs to attempt to equalize that. For the majority of our country's history up until the 1900s, most of the money the United States government brought in was from tariffs. Our founding fathers deeply.
Well,
believed in
yeah, it's
tariffs.
Article 1, Section 2,
Yeah.
right? They had
It is in the Constitution.
they only had the right to tax through excise and trade.
Yeah.
That was it.
So I agree with all of that. Now, I do believe that, you know, if you want to have an ally, if you want to make a friend in the world, it's better to, you know, trade with them than to go to war with them. But, you know, with massive countries like China, for example, which is obviously the one that everyone would think about.
No,
you know,
it's not China. It's China.
yeah. I think, you know.
I wish I could do it better. I know.
You know,
but
I don't have any.
I amuse myself.
I don't have any opposition to tariffs in those countries.
Open-
Let's say government incentives in the form of, and you don't have to answer like yes or no, just
Yeah.
like tax incentives, tax credits, subsidies, those type of things for business.
Oh, no subsidies. Absolutely no subsidies. I've seen the amount of subsidies the government's been giving out. I mean, how much did we pay Amazon to come here?
Well, we were going to pay them.
We're going to give them
like $1 billion?
a very large break, basically.
So what I saw, because an accountant actually showed me some statistical analysis pertaining to Amazon coming to Georgia. It's going to take us 499 years of hypothetical static growth
Sure.
to pay back how much money we gave Amazon. That's remarkable. The Amazon stores that they've currently opened up have not, I think it's about 40% capacities. What we said what the government wanted them to fill regarding the amount of people that in Georgia that they want to employ, it's about 40% that they're actually employing right now. So what Amazon said that they would do, they're not delivering on that. But I do not believe in the government subsidizing private corporations or private companies. tax relief for, maybe small businesses. I could see that being of a benefit. Allows for more competition in marketplaces. But subsidies. What was the one that you said?
I said tax incentives, tax credits, and subsidies.
But I think the one dangerous thing that we get into is tax incentives and things like that. Usually are only utilized by massive corporations. The biggest corporations in the United States are the ones that abuse those incentives the most. The small companies that it's said that it's supposed to help oftentimes doesn't help them to the amount that they allege it will. So,
do you know why that is? Not a trick question.
Well, I mean, a portion of it definitely has to do with understanding of tax codes. I mean, potentially Facebook can hire as many lawyers as they want to understand the tax codes to find a way to kind of abuse those systems. But someone whose business brings in $100,000 and they only have 2 or 3 employees, it's going to be far more difficult to discover those ways in which you can utilize that system.
No, on that I agree, and I think it's important because oftentimes, even if people have a principle, it's kind of, if they can't back it up, they'll just like cower because they feel, I don't know, embarrassed or not confident in their position. So let's say that they pass a bill saying, hey, there's all these like up and coming rappers in Atlanta, and we have a music industry that's kind of struggling. If you have a music industry here in Georgia, you don't have to pay taxes on your profits for the next 10 years.
Oh, that wouldn't make any sense.
Okay.
10 years is a remarkable amount of time for
1 year.
Any taxes on your profits. I mean, if you want to, now, I mean, most of the most talented rappers, I don't know if you listen to a lot of rap music.
I don't.
This isn't really about rap.
I mean,
this
they
is
most,
about
but yeah,
an
just
idea.
for this, I mean, they mostly come from Atlanta. We got some of the best rappers. So, I mean, we really already have the music industry. But if you're talking about like studio and producing companies,
you can pick any small business.
Okay.
It's just to make it cut.
Yeah.
People understand better if you give them a
I mean,
framework.
I like the idea.
And the thing that annoys me is that people aren't able to replicate a principle from one area to another. So this could be small accounting offices. This could be small podcast studios. This could be small grocery stores. It doesn't matter.
Well, I like the idea. It allows for more competition. And if actual small businesses are able to be built in the state of Georgia and compete with bigger ones, I support that.
Okay. I guess I would find that to be a subsidy. And the reason I said tax incentives, credits, and subsidies as 3 different things, most of the time they're actually kind of all one and the same. So do you see it intrinsically differently?
Well,
that
I mean,
a direct subsidy could be worse.
Yeah.
Like I'm handing $1 billion to Amazon, but there is also, if you just don't tax Amazon for 10 years, then you're also handing them money.
Yeah.
So
well, to the point, I mean, you could probably do that kind of collective understanding of topics with almost every single concept in politics. So, I mean, I don't see tax incentives as a subsidy. I understand the thought of saying, oh, well, if you're not giving them money, then they're kind of, if like the government isn't, if they're not giving the government money through taxes, then the government is kind of subsidizing them. I understand that, but I think that might be a bit of a concoction of different ideas.
Okay, I disagree on that one, but Shane,
I'm going to switch topics again.
That's fine.
As I like to do. I think it's probably another contentious topic, probably for your voters as well. You've stated in some videos that you're a Trump fan. Imagine you probably voted for him. You think he's doing a pretty good job. I think you were quoted as saying, "Promises made, promises kept." I have contention with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Okay, on a number of issues.
I would figure. Yeah.
So one of my biggest, and we've already kind of talked about it, is red flag laws. What do you think of his support for red flag gun confiscation?
I don't agree with red flag laws because.
So you think he's wrong?
Well, yeah, you can think that someone's wrong.
No, I'm saying you think. I mean, you think Donald Trump is wrong on red flag laws?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now,
Right.
you can support someone as a president and say, I don't like that one thing he did. You can do that. That's fine. Now, my first interest in politics was Ron Paul. So it obviously Ron Paul is very different from Donald Trump.
Very different.
understandable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for people who don't understand red flag laws, and the difficult thing, the one thing I really hate about legislation is how they can use the title of legislation to make it sound good.
Yeah,
Like the
it's always the
Patriot Act,
opposite, right?
Affordable
Yeah,
Care
yeah,
Act.
sure.
So, red flag laws sound really nice. And
I think they sound terrible.
well, a lot of people don't understand that, it completely removes due process.
In what way do they sound nice, I guess, would be my
People
curiosity.
would, I don't know. I would assume people would think like, oh, if like that person has like a red flag or a metaphorical red flag, then that's a bad person. They shouldn't have a gun. That kind of thought process. So, for people, listeners or people who are going to watch this later who don't know what a red flag law, it basically removes due process and takes away someone's Second Amendment without them actually being a felon or committing the crimes that are necessary to have your Second Amendment removed.
Okay.
So no, I don't support red flag laws.
Okay. So AG Barr, obviously, he is a huge proponent as well. He's obviously been handpicked and stated by the president.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that guy?
I like his persona. I like how he's completely willing to stand up to a lot of the people that, during one of the testimonies when I think it was Kamala Harris said, could we have these documents? He said, no. And she said, why? He goes, you don't need them. I like that a lot. And, that's kind of a persona that I have about politics.
What in terms of like secret, classified type documents?
It was so during the testimony, the Senate is only allowed to obtain and understand certain documents.
Mm-hmm.
The document that Kamala Harris wanted violated that. It had nothing to do with the testimony itself. So William Barr is completely allowed to say, no, you don't get it. So, I like that. And I like someone who's kind of willing to defy the government, and someone who's willing to say, no, just because, you're in the majority. I know.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here, and I'm going to ask this question because as an AG, anything that the Justice Department does is procured with tax dollars, right?
Okay.
It's money that's, taken from us by force to produce either work or a service or anything in terms of documentation. So when a quote unquote senator or legislature ask somebody in a bureaucracy for information, should they not be privy to that information?
Not necessarily.
Why?
Well, I mean, think if, Nancy Pelosi said, I want every single one of Donald Trump's phone records. I want to see every single one of his texts. I want to see every single one of his emails. Everything that he says, I want to see. I want to see every single thing he does with the
Are we talking personal or
official?
Or official documents?
Well, no. I mean,
official.
Based on what you're saying, she can ask for that.
Yeah.
And she hypothetically should be privileged to that. I don't think that's true. I mean,
for official documents, I think yes.
The abuse that could occur from that would be terrible for the government.
Tell me about the abuse of secrecy then.
The abuse of secrecy?
Yeah, there's a great saying, I think it was Ben Franklin, that secrecy is repugnant to a republic. So if bureaucracies don't answer to the legislature, then how are they accountable?
Well, I mean, bureaucracies, should and do oftentimes answer to the legislature.
But they don't. When's the last time you ever saw somebody from a bureaucracy pay? Lois Lerner, John Costigan, what's his name that was the AG for Obama? I mean,
Holder.
Yeah, Holder. I have not seen anybody wrapped up in cuffs and thrown in prison to pay for anything that they've done. Probably, I don't know, since Bernie Madoff, and he just crossed the feds. So when I ask you that, I'm very serious in terms of when accountability. If we can have bureaucracies who are supplied by taxpayer money say no to legislatures who are investigating them, then how do we keep accountability?
Well, I mean, the amount of documents that they could obtain during an inquiry or a subpoena is remarkable. So I mean, I might not be following what you're saying, but the idea that the government is remarkably now, obviously there's certain facets of the government that are kept secret, and I would think that that's kind of important to have certain things that occur.
So let's say, to make it easier, at the state level, what things or how much of those things do you think should I guess what things should be kept secret by the government at the state level?
Well, I mean,
what types of things? You don't have to like enumerate all of them.
I'm
if
sure
you
it's
think
spelled out already, but I don't think every single thing that occurs in the legislature needs to be completely public information. I mean, I might not be giving you guys the answer that you want.
No, I don't want any answer. I wonder, like, just one specific example of things you might think should be kept private. If you don't have any, like, I personally also think so. The idea that I entertain is that there is a ton of stuff. Yeah.
Let me give you an example.
Okay.
So what they did is they made, I don't know what it is for Georgia, but they basically made C-SPAN for every single committee hearing. So occasionally in committee hearings, people talk about politics and not the actual legislation that they're supposed to be discussing. So now the committee hearings almost never occur to the extent that they used to because they're public. So
what I didn't understand that.
So basically, what he's saying is people are less likely to have real discussions
because it's public.
Because it's public,
and people are going to be more secretive when you attempt to do what you're entailing.
That's an interesting view. So in Georgia, every committee hearing is public. There's a stream, but subcommittee hearings are not public because, well, apparently they don't know how to put little cameras places for subcommittee hearings in the same. It's funny because in the same rooms where the committee hearings happen.
It's funny because they're all the way up here, 60 miles north of the perimeter on 400. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? No, that's a weird thing.
I'm being facetious.
I am too,
because they happen in the same room. So since the dawn of time, though, these committee hearings are public. They just weren't streamed. Mm-hmm. So you think that the fact that there was a technological limitation?
No, I think what's going to happen is if you try to make everything open, the consequence, because people have human nature,
of course,
is that it's going to do the inverse of what you're hoping it does, which is the way a lot of government actions happen. There's a lot of unintended consequences that you didn't foresee when you pass certain things, and I think that's going to be one of them. I think it's going to make the government become more secretive and try to be more sly with the things that they do.
I actually think that's correct in some ways. When they talk about campaign finance, they'll pass. Yeah. But this is because they're the ones who craft the legislation. Yeah. And then they fund others to go around it. But could you entertain the idea potentially that there is so much that the government does, right? And you said it's like, well, there could be so much, Shane. There's all these documents. What if the right answer, and here I am looking for, like, this is my personal my personal opinion. What if the right answer is the government should be doing so little that there wouldn't be so much to look into?
You know what? I love that idea. I think that the government should be doing far less. And now that small amount of things that they should be doing should be focused on the Constitution and, limiting the budget and expanding the amount of freedoms and liberty that we have. But my overall opinion of what you're asking is that you're going to have the unintended consequences of the inverse of what you were hoping to attain.
Okay.
Fair enough answer.
So what are some of your favorite things that Donald Trump has done or represents?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I think, and it's not very tangible, is that he is very, very genuine and honest.
We love intangible things. That's
yeah. Well, he's very honest with what he believes in.
Okay.
He doesn't give you some pointless, stupid politician's answer about every single thing he says. A perfect example was this past week with NATO. He had Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, next to him, and Macron kept giving these lengthy 5-6 minute answers to every single question a reporter asked.
Well, he's French. That's what we do.
Donald Trump would give a 10-second answer, and then there was one question about ISIS terrorists, and Macron gave this lengthy answer, and Trump goes, 20% of all the prisoners that we have from ISIS are from France. Do you want them? And then he gave this another long answer, and then Trump goes, he's a really good politician. I like how he answers everything like a politician. He points it out. I like that a lot. I also like that he's kept both parties, the media, he's kept the swamp, he's kept them accountable for their actions. I think we have this terrible, swamp that has been created in the government, filled with bureaucracy, career politicians, and Donald Trump's fought against that, and I appreciate that a lot. He didn't decrease the budget. I'm not very happy with that.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah. I mean, every time it's come around, I don't care if it's Republicans or Democrats, he signed it.
Yeah. That's upsetting. But
I was still looking for some of your favorites.
I
appreciate the less tangible ones, but maybe some more
my
direct
favorite
actions.
thing is that he hasn't got us involved in a pointless foreign war. That's
Okay.
my number one favorite thing that Donald Trump's done.
Anything else?
I mean,
It doesn't have to be favorites, just good things, direct action wise.
Now that we're talking about NATO, I like that he's keeping the United Nations, the European Union. He's keeping NATO. He got rid of NAFTA. He's keeping, the things I said preceding that, he's keeping them accountable, paying the amount that they should. I like that a lot. I like that he's kind of combative regarding China. I mean, I think I can go on for a good amount of time.
Do you have anything
Donald
else
Trump.
that you don't like that he's done?
I mean,
That you can think while supporting him? Like I do think people can have nuance.
no, I like what he's been doing. I think he's done a very, very good job.
Some specific things he's done.
Oh, I just listed them.
So I'll ask.
I just wanted more if that's okay.
On immigration,
Uh-huh.
I think we've got a completely, messed up immigration system. Obviously not constitutional to begin with.
Okay.
In terms of the immigration system, do you see it as working, not working?
Well, I mean, people have a pathway to citizenship. They can attain a green card. They can attain a visa. They can attain citizenship.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a lot of people illegally coming across the southern
Sure.
border. We have also a lot of people overstaying their visas.
Chain migration.
Chain migration, I don't approve of that either.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think the immigration system is working, but because of the amount of influx we have, it appears to be broken.
Okay. So in the Constitution, the Constitution gives the feds the authority of naturalization, not immigration.
Okay.
Do you think that Georgia should have the final say in who comes to Georgia?
Well, what could occur with that is it's something that's happened with California. So there's, the state's rights position that, the state should have individualized beliefs pertaining to immigration. But the issue with that is that once you get into one state, you can go to any other state. It's kind of like if you wanted to look at it somewhere else, it's the European Union. What happens is if you get into any country in the European Union, you can go to any other country as well. So because they don't have borders like that, you have to find a way to have a more federalized system pertaining to immigration laws because there's no borders between the states.
Okay. So fair enough answer. I want to kind of move into the wall at this point.
Okay.
Donald Trump's obviously major, like that was one of the key things that he ran on, is immigration, and we're building the damn wall. Support for the wall?
I think it could help.
You think? Okay. So I guess my question is do you approve of the method in which they're going down there and building the wall? Then
What, like, do you not like the concrete that they're pouring or something?
no. What I think is they're going out and they're taking land that's not theirs as well.
The eminent domain part.
Well, I mean, if it's directly on the border, it would be very, very difficult to.
But a lot of places it's not, right? Because there's a river. There's a Rio
Yes,
Grande
the Rio
River
Grande.
that moves. You can't put a fence in the river, and people own that property on the riverbank, right?
Yeah.
So if they're going down there and they're saying, hey, man, we're claiming this as U.S. territory now, and we're taking property, what are your thoughts
I think
on
with
that?
the border, it's a different issue with eminent domain. I mean, I think that you should be able to put up a border wall or a border fence on that line for your border. That makes perfect sense to me.
But what I'm saying is that it's not on that
It's
border.
yeah, I know, but you're trying to solve a problem, and then the eminent domain regarding someone's property, very, 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 very close to the southern border, you kind of have to weigh your options. And I think it's very important to fix our immigration system and help it and decrease illegal immigration. The way to do that is what we're talking about. So I think that it's fair to do what they're doing.
Okay, so I'm not the biggest fan of eminent domain. It does exist at the federal level and at the state level. I have an argument that at the state level, it's not like it shouldn't exist. What do you think at the state levels? So your argument there is that it's worth the border because of the federal immigration problem we may have and so forth. Georgia doesn't have a border with another country. So in Georgia, what would you use eminent domain for?
I mean, I think what's important is if the government's going to take someone's land, they have to pay them for the full price of what that property is worth.
Who determines that?
The market would.
Okay.
So you're saying the property owner would have to be satiated with a dollar amount before the government takes the property?
Yeah.
Okay. Fair
And
enough.
I've seen what happens. I forget near the Mall of Georgia, they expanded the highway, and I feel really bad for this person, but I had looked it up before it, and their house was worth around $400,000, and then the government, they weren't willing to sell it to the government because I think the government was willing to offer them $40,000 or something. Yes. So then they end up building the highway and really abusing their land, and then their properties decreased by half because their front yard is a highway.
Yeah,
that's terrible. And I feel
I'd say it's criminal.
I'm glad that you have empathy for that, and you brought up that thing. So,
because
regardless of that, do you still think eminent domain would be reasonable in certain circumstances?
I think you have to, what circumstances would you?
Any is there anyone that would exist? I'm not saying one specific one.
I think eminent domain. The government should be able to build on certain things if they pay the property owner for that piece of land. So for example,
but they pay the price of that they're requesting. Yeah.
So
that they're requesting specifically.
No. Well, I think the market would judge it. And I think you can probably come to an agreement on that.
Who's the market?
So if someone's saying, if you were to sell your house and your house is worth $300,000,
sure.
I have no idea what your house is worth. So let's
apparently
say
$325,000. If anybody wants to buy a house in Cumming, Georgia,
so you're selling it for $300,000, and if they expand this, it's going to decrease it by $10,000. In the market, property owners, people in real estate say, yeah, it's going to decrease by $10,000. The government should pay you $10,000. It shouldn't be the way the government does, and they go, I think it's $1,000. But when they want to increase your taxes, they say your house is worth a massive amount. They can't get the best of both worlds. So I think that the market should be able to estimate that. But a good example is, my backyard, I have a fairly large backyard, and they want to expand the highway there, and it's going to probably drop off about $20,000 in terms of the value of the property. So I think, even though they're not taking over the whole property, I think that they should, pay the property owner for that amount.
Interesting.
Does eminent domain, does that mean that the government's not paying for it, or is eminent domain just the government taking?
Eminent domain is where the government comes in and says, "We want that piece of property. We're willing to give you X amount for it.
Okay.
Will you take it or will you not?" And then court proceedings
sometimes. Eminent domain is the official government procedure.
Okay.
And the things that come with it, like appropriate pay, are usually the details of that procedure.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if saying I believe in eminent domain if they pay for the value of the property. I didn't know if that was the right way to formulate that.
It's the same way as saying you're for decriminalizing marijuana or cannabis.
Yeah.
Damn it, I made the mistake. And then not discussing the details in a reasonable fashion. You could say one or the other. We had several podcasts about this, 2 or 3. The death penalty.
Very good.
Open-ended question.
I don't support the death penalty.
Why not? I was going to say why yes or no, but you just said no. So
I don't think it's the state who should be taking life.
Okay.
And if you just look at it, the amount of people that have been put to death wrongly. First off, that's terrible. That's on society, because the government doesn't care. That's on society.
Why doesn't the government care?
Well, the government doesn't really have any negatives. If they take someone's life unjustly, it's pushed onto society.
Agreed.
So
you don't often hear that.
Yeah.
I say the government is a non-entity, so it can't care.
Yeah.
Sure.
What's not
legal fiction.
Yeah. So, the amount of people that have been wrongly convicted of a crime and then put to death, that's terrible. And I think right now what's happening in Georgia, where oftentimes judges, instead of offering the death penalty for a conviction, they're offering life in prison. I think that's a far better way of doing it.
Okay. What would you say to people who argue that if you don't have the death penalty, criminals aren't going to be scared enough to not commit crimes?
You can look at it from a statistical standpoint that it's not a deterrence.
Okay.
Which, I don't know if that would be sufficient to someone's argument just to plainly say that it's not a deterrence, but
statistics actually back that up.
Yeah, but oftentimes people go, yeah, but I don't care.
That's fair. Tons of people don't care about facts.
You have
that's the world we live in.
You have the Dukakis question,
sure,
which they said, if someone murdered Kitty Caucus, was his wife,
would you be letting him out of prison, right?
Yeah, and if I don't get to the guy first, but that's the reason I don't think that people should be put to death, because I'm not thinking in the right frame of mind. Because if someone was to kill my girlfriend, I'm going to find that person.
I had the same. We had this conversation, and I said, I'm a split mind, right? I'll sit here and say I don't believe in the death penalty all day, but I said go do something to my family.
Yeah,
right.
I'm going to find you.
I'm a different. I have this split to go. I can definitely I understand
Yeah.
in that case. So I think the straightforward forward answer is perfect. No, you don't believe in the death penalty, and the state should not have that power.
What did you mean by the right frame of mind? And I think I know what you meant. I
Because-
just want you to explain it to people.
If Banks kills my girlfriend, I'm gonna hunt down Banks.
Right.
But I should not be able to make a
Why do I
judgment.
find that funny?
I should not be able to make a judgment on his life because I'm not in the right frame of mind. Because I want to get revenge.
No, I
on
get
this
it.
guy.
I get it.
So you think that if you would hunt me down, and kill me, that would be wrong.
Yeah.
Even though you do it because your mind was. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a.
That's a very, very sensible state of mind, I think. And
You know what? I don't know if I think my girlfriend put up a pretty good fight. I think it might be flipped. I think my girlfriend.
By the
might
way,
kill Banks.
I have no desire to kill anybody. And I only said it was funny because it's an uncomfortable
Yeah, it's a
hypothesis.
weird thing to
So,
say. Yeah.
We were mentioning Bobby Franklin on the show the other day,
Yeah.
and I forgot his name, which I'm embarrassed to do. So I'm bringing him up. Do you know who he is? He was a state rep from Cobb County.
Okay.
He was very pro-life, kind of a local rebel, and he died in 2011, unfortunately. But before there was a Matt Gertler, he was kind of a Matt Gertler type-esque character. And he has written some of.
I like how it's almost like Matt Gertler's become this.
he's a standard. He's a
become
standard bearer.
But he's like a fictionalized character from like
He's
a
a-
movie
yeah,
or a
he-
story.
He's a legend in the making.
There are
for sure.
literally other state reps who use Gertler as a verb.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to go full Gertler when they're
You
going
know,
to vote.
when
no or
when I
something.
was working for Kemp, I used to try to meet with him as often as possible just to get the chance to talk to him. He was oftentimes busy. And, I remember, I think it was a month or two ago, he sent me a message on Facebook asking if he could call me. And I was like, oh my gosh, it came full circle. I used to try to talk to this guy whenever I got the chance, but now he wanted to talk to me. So that was really exciting. Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's perfectly fine. I don't mind my buddy Matt getting praise. That's all cool. He's got an opponent, by the way, guys. If you want to go donate to
Yeah.
him, it's mattgertler.com. And he won't be able to raise any funds in about 22 days.
Or if you want to donate to me, it's www.
We're not there yet.
At the end of the podcast, Donald.
Yeah, I mean, is this your first podcast?
But
That was a real politician thing to do.
Listen, always be selling, man.
I mean, there's some what the politicians do is just normal.
Banks
actions.
would definitely approve if I had done that
Yeah.
during an interview.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, for sure. It's plug it as many times as you can.
Find as many funny moments where people forget how weird that is because they hardly know you that you're begging them for money.
Yeah.
So he introduced a bunch of bills, and they're some of my favorites. One of them is that you shouldn't have to have a driver's license to drive in Georgia. And he even made the argument that somebody said, well, what about a 12-year-old? I don't know why 12 is just the magic number. And he
Yeah.
was like, if a 12-year-old can drive, why not let them drive?
No, don't agree with that.
Okay, what about just not having to have a license? Not
I
the
don't,
age
I don't
constraint.
agree with that either.
License for the state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the, I actually worked, I had an internship at the Gwinnett County District Attorney's Office, and they said that the most difficult thing was sovereign citizens, people who don't think that they need any form of identification to, for example, drive. So oftentimes if a cop tried to pull them over, they would just keep driving. Because, the cop, they would not see the cop as a form of government, so they would just keep on driving, and then they would get arrested. So I think that having a driver's license is important. I don't think a 12... Well, let's do a reductionist argument. I don't think a 6-year-old should drive.
I probably agree.
Yeah.
I don't think they can physically,
Reach the pedals?
physically drive. No.
I think
Maybe
there's
like-
actually a story of a 7-year-old
Yeah.
somewhere driving, which is funny. Other things like that. What about having licenses to sell beer or raw milk, those kind of things? In Georgia, they exist.
Yeah. I mean, I could understand the part where, you have to keep up certain types of standards to ensure that you're not poisoning people. But, if you want to sell something, you should be able to sell it.
Okay, but so you answered both sides there.
That's the way I would look at it.
Okay.
Because, if I'm selling raw milk and you want to get some, I mean, you don't really know my reputation. I'm sure there's not like a Yelp review about my raw milk.
So you think the government should just not be allowed to deny you a license, is what you're saying?
I think that you should pass a standard to ensure that you're not poisoning people.
Okay.
Is it by the government?
a license from the government?
A
but
standard set by the government. Well, I mean,
that was the default.
well, there are industry standards, and then there are government standards.
I follow what you're saying.
So
Yeah.
the delineation, I think, is what's important. So is it, hey, he's got some raw milk and I want to buy it. He doesn't have to meet government standards. He needs to meet his.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you don't have to get a license, then you should have the full right to sue him if you do get poisoned by him.
Okay.
I agree with that too.
Yeah.
There was one bill. Sorry, but there was one bill that I'd heard about. I don't know where it's from, but I'd never thought about it. I thought it was so interesting, where the National Guard cannot send people. You cannot have the National Guard sent to a foreign country.
Protect the Guard Act.
If the Congress did not approve of that war. What's it called?
Protect the Guard Act.
I heard that a few days ago, and I love that.
It's our buddy Pat McGeehan. And
It is. We had him on episode.
Where's he from?
He's from West Virginia. And
West Virginia.
He's
He's an
outstanding.
Air Force.
Man,
I don't
I
even
heard
know
that,
his-
and I love that.
So
his rank, and you know what's cool? He wouldn't care that I don't know his rank.
I think he was a captain. At any rate, I'm glad you bring that up because I wanted to get back into some more policy that I have seen introduced in the states.
Yeah.
That being one of them, I think it's going to catch on, vastly over the next couple of years.
Oh, yeah.
Would you be willing
First
to
day.
sponsor it?
First day.
Really?
First day.
Awesome.
Oh, we
There's actually
should do that. We should do a back and forth of bills and just you saying if
There's-
you'd sponsor them or not.
There's
Yeah.
actually a PDF of the bill. So
Yeah.
I could just print that out right at
Well,
the
basically,
bottom.
yeah, you're going to have to change a couple things in
Yeah.
there and wordsmith it a tad just to fit within
Yeah.
our government. But secondly, would be our buddy up in South Carolina has introduced Rep. Stuart Jones. I don't know if you know him or not. Absolutely, Ron Pauley in the making, and he has introduced.
How old is he?
35-ish.
Oh, that's
37,
good.
38.
That's
Yeah,
good.
he's not.
might be a little older.
Yeah. At any rate, gold and silver is legal tender here
Yeah.
in Georgia. Are you familiar with the subject or?
I mean, I would support that, but I can understand like a if you went to a McDonald's, they're not able to accept gold
Sure.
as your legal tender.
Well,
Or-
that's interesting. I don't know the ramifications of that bill, if that would force that or not.
Yeah, I don't think it forces.
But if you're
I
buying-
don't think you can ever force private industry to do
Accept something.
anything,
So
right?
but that's what you do with the monopoly on the dollar is you say that
Yes.
that public debts, but that's public debts, I guess, not
Yeah,
private debts.
that's right. It's public.
Huh, interesting.
Public debts are different, and public debts can be settled in bullion of whatever species.
Yeah.
So you're down with
I mean, if you're
bimetallism
paying-
and
if you're-
metallism and ending the Fed and
Yeah.
Yeah?
I was talking about his license plate.
Yeah.
I can't talk about his license plate on this
Banks
podcast.
talks
You
about
can
it all
talk
the
about
time.
it. My license plate says "End Fed."
And
It's that simple.
I mean, if you're like buying a house or a car, I think it'd be kind of cool to pay a bit in gold or silver or
Yeah.
precious metal. I can understand if the company that you're buying it from isn't willing to accept that, but I like that idea.
Yeah. Do you have any on
Stuart-
top of your
you
head?
said
Because I got
Stuart-
tons.
Yeah.
Is it Stuart Jones?
Stuart Jones, Rep. Stuart
Jones.
Jones, great guy.
There's a bill in Iowa and in Colorado. In Colorado, it passed to decriminalize psilocybin, which is mushrooms, basically.
It's a psychedelic.
I think it's so weird to think that. There's stuff that just grows on the ground, and the government says that if you do that, you go to prison forever. Yeah, it's fine.
You support legislation then that absolutely either decriminalizes or legalizes psilocybin?
I think that the entire House should have to try it out, and then they should write the legislation pertaining.
Boy,
to
I
that.
want YouTube videos
Oh,
of
could
that.
you imagine?
Oh,
Well, that's
okay,
not going to
great.
happen. We've got people on the House floor who say that cannabis makes you jump out of windows. So,
Oh goodness.
Yeah, I know. 1930s reefer madness.
Yeah.
would you sign a bill that would ban all types of subsidies to private companies?
Oh yeah, I would support that.
Okay.
There's some great bills that have been introduced up in New Hampshire, especially. It's part of the Free State Project, if you're aware of that. There's one that absolutely outlaws all capture of mass surveillance. So anything that happens on your devices, your electronic devices, falls into the Fourth Amendment. And they've actually, I think they pass an amendment up there that includes that all electronic messages and anything
I
that
like
you
that.
do, you're in full support.
My policy analyst, this girl named Lindsay, I was talking about earlier. She has the most extensive understanding of privacy policies pertaining to like social media, Facebook, Google, people like that, or organizations like that. And I mean, the way in which those terms and conditions, as soon as you accept that, first off, it's thousands of pages. No one's going to read that.
Yeah, private corporation though.
Yeah.
I'm talking about government. Government be able to do mass surveillance, so facial recognition, license
collecting
plate
metadata.
scanning, stingrays, things like that. That the government now puts on a tower somewhere and pulls information from you specifically.
No, it's not all right.
Okay.
Would you sign a bill that banned red light cameras across the state?
Oh man, Texas did that. I like that. That's cool to me.
Okay. Would you ban a law that banned license plate readers across the state?
What is the license plate reader?
It's
I mean, I know it's so understandable. It makes
It's
so
the
much sense.
things on the police cars that
On
scan
the back of 'em,
that
yeah.
scan license plates, and so they do it for like if you have insurance or whatever else is attached to your license plate
Oh,
number.
does it simplify the process a little bit?
I mean,
if it's simple-
It's data.
It
It's pure-
streamlines on a like they can scan. I
It's
forget the numbers, but it's
massive.
tens of thousands at a time.
Yeah.
You'll see police cars that have
Yeah,
two in
that
the front,
little
two in the
box.
back, so those. So it does help law enforcement find people who don't have insurance, who have been flagged for whatever reason, because they have a warrant out for their arrest
For fantasy crime.
or something like that.
I want to know about that. I mean, I think if it assists in maybe streamlining to help people, but if it's used to, really kind of like, in a sense, hunt down people, I don't know if I would be in support of that. I would probably, want to speak. I had a meeting a few weeks ago with the Gwinnett Police Department. I would probably want to have a chance to talk with them and see the benefits and negatives of it.
Yeah, they'd probably be in favor of. Well, they'd be in favor of it. I know. Would you be in favor of a bill that banned them from keeping the data for more than a day?
What data?
So the data they collect is the license plate number and the GPS coordinates of where the license plate number is.
It's all
going.
stored.
Yeah, but I mean, if to do a report or anything like that requires that it's held for more than a day, then I would support.
So what they do now is that they sell this data to repo companies and they share it with other police stations so that they can have tracking of where people.
It's not exactly secure either. You know what I mean? So if your local sheriff comes in, and this is usually who does it, it's your local sheriff that comes in, puts in mass surveillance type stingrays or license plate readers and things like that. What they're doing is collecting data and through the auspiciouses of security and safety and all that kind of fun stuff, and don't know the first thing about IT.
Oh my gosh! I mean, what was it? Was it the city of Atlanta that got hacked?
Yeah,
and sent out information of 600,000 people.
No, I'm telling you right now. I mean, that's the thing is we have places for TS type top secret type documentation and information that has been breached at the federal level.
Yeah.
And so when I see these local sheriffs implementing, mass surveillance and data collection and things like that, to think that they understand the IT ramifications and what this data means to people, I think they're absurdly short-sighted.
I mean, if you watch the committee hearings at the federal level, sometimes when they have people like Mark Zuckerberg and the questions they ask are pretty. So I've got one more.
Go
ahead.
There was one senator. He might be the oldest person on earth. I don't know his name. He was, I think, 1,000 years old. And Mark Zuckerberg is up there. And first off, they have no idea about how Facebook works or anything. And so you're talking to one of the most important people in the world, and the senator says, "I've got a red button next to the settings. What does that mean?" You missed your chance. What is this? Why are you asking that question?
That's funny. So I have one more. Would you sign a bill to ban DUI checkpoints?
That is unconstitutional when it comes to the what is that? The ability to travel freely in the United States. So it's unconstitutional, and there's a lot of problems with DUI checkpoints where
that brings up a great point. Within 100 miles of the border, I think it was back in the 1950s. I think it was actually 1952.
You could check to see if they're a citizen.
100 miles of the border is a constitution-free zone.
In some ways, yeah. We've termed that they wouldn't agree with that.
Now, you would where do you fall with that?
Well, I'm sure there's a reason that they said that.
Yeah,
sure, they said it because they passed a bill.
No. But what was the point of making the bill?
Well, the point of it is obviously to come within the borders, right? To now you
No, I've got Dick Cheney on the phone. He says it's national security.
Yeah, it's national security. That's what they'll say, right? It falls right in line with it's for your safety, citizens. Trust us. Mm-hmm. But in those 100 miles, right now, your rights don't exist, right? There is no Bill of Rights that are codified.
Well, that's problematic.
Yeah, problematic to say the very least, right? All right, so I think we've covered a lot of the gamut. I mean, from taxes to education to from everything. We've got only about 12 minutes left.
Oh wow, I
before
didn't see
12
time
o'clock.
going by.
Yeah, it's been a really fast paced conversation that's been full.
It's exciting having me on here.
Well, I'm telling you right now, like this is good, and I think this is what people need to do.
Yeah.
I think they need to sit down with their local, people who are going to run for office or who hope to represent them, and have these really like, how do we understand you? You know, and
I think the good thing was that, like you and I,
I'm radical, man. I am.
On a broad
I'm crazy.
sense, we have some agreements, but I mean, I'm not just gonna agree with everything you say just to please you guys.
And that is a commendable attribute, because here's the thing: is if you agree with me just to appease me, you're going to go do the same damn thing down there, right? I definitely understand that. We like to do some fun stuff at the end, just to keep it light and humorous.
I've got a few more than usual, just so you know. So if you want to do it back and forth,
go for it.
Awesome.
You got a few, knock them out.
Okay.
Speed round, short answers.
Man, I wish
Tip of your tongue.
I wish I had written these down because it just escaped my brain.
What's your favorite book?
Thank you.
I think The Revolution by Sean Paul.
Sean Paul?
Ron Paul.
The Revolution by
I said Sean Paul.
Okay, what is the last issue where you change your mind quite like 180?
That is a brilliant question. I think it actually may have been tariffs, because I am constantly debating within my mind about certain topics, and I think that's a healthy thing to do, and politicians don't do that enough.
Cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, but I was contemplating that in my mind, and I was trying to figure if I actually supported tariffs or if I was just supporting it because I liked the president. And then when I looked at it from more of a principled standpoint, I realized that I think what we're doing right now with tariffs was of a benefit, and fair and free trade is important. So I think those tariffs is something that I changed my mind about.
Shane?
Yeah, that's a great question. In terms of just activity outside of politics and work, what do you love doing?
Oh man, I love going to either watching football games or going to Atlanta United games. I don't know.
UGA fan?
Love you. Well, that was a brutal loss yesterday,
dude. You knew it was coming though, right? I mean, you've been here since you were 2.
I'm very, very defiant. So no matter what, I'm gonna think. So my family.
You haven't been an Atlanta fan long enough.
My family's from up north. We're from New Jersey, New York.
Yeah.
So I'm a Giants fan. Now, we've won 2 games this season, and my girlfriend and I go into every game saying, "Oh, the Giants are going to blow out whatever team we're playing." So no matter what, I always support my team.
So you like watching some football on the side?
Yeah, football, soccer, those are my 2 sports.
Okay,
I love watching.
right on.
That was actually going to be my question, but cool. Do you think English should be the official language of government, meaning it would be codified, and this is not like a small one, but I forgot to ask it. It should be codified that you're not allowed to have anything but English as government papers.
I mean, I think if you maybe requested it to be in 2 languages, then you should be able to do that.
Okay.
But I mean, I like the idea of, for all intents and purposes, all text being in English. But, if you, speak a different language, we don't have an official language in the United States. If you speak a different language and you wanted to supplement English with another language, you should be able to do that.
Right on. I've got my last question.
Are these answers should my answers be longer?
No.
Okay.
No, not necessarily.
No, these are short. I got my last one. So unless you got some in between,
go ahead.
Last question.
Yeah.
Are you a cat or a dog guy?
Dog.
Right on.
My sorry for keep mentioning her, but my girlfriend and I want to get a dog, and I don't know what kind of. I really want like a black lab or a golden retriever, one of those kind of dogs. I really want. You have I think it's a Doberman Pinscher.
I do.
When the dog greeted me, I said, "That's the most Shane Hazel dog I've ever seen."
Hey man, no, it's like what they say in the Marine Corps, right? No better friend, no worse enemy, and she's my early warning system.
Yeah, but
right?
I like dogs more than cats.
Yeah, all right.
Anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to mention, not in like long detail, but.
I mean, I think we did. I think you guys did a good job.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you guys. Worked hard. I really enjoyed it. I had a good time. Great setup. We had great energy coming in, and it was fun.
Let's plug your websites, man. Where can people go out and donate to you?
So you guys could look at Donald Schmidt for Georgia on Facebook if you would like. We have a lot of videos and posts about that. We almost post every single day about something. And if you want to go on the website, it's www.donaldforgeorgia.com.
When's primary?
It's going to be in March.
March, towards the end, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I think 20. I don't want to get it wrong so people forget what date
How
it
many
It's going to be
people-
in. It's going to be in May.
Yeah, is it May?
Yeah.
How many people?
Sorry.
Yeah, how many? I think
pretty sure it's in
I-
May,
I-
isn't it?
Qualification is in March.
March,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Voting's in May.
I just don't want to confuse people.
How many people right now do you think you have as opponents? Just the one who's
One.
in the incumbent?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think it's a pretty Republican state or Republican sector of Georgia?
Yeah, it's based on the I shouldn't give out too much information.
Okay, yeah,
maybe,
yeah,
maybe
hey,
he
no,
watches this, but yes, it is Republican. It's
Every single state rep in Georgia listens to the podcast.
That's right.
Yeah.
They follow it one way or another because they know we're sitting here beating them up most of the time. So remember that if you get down there.
Yeah.
So if you want to find out more about Donald, go to donaldforgeorgia, you said?
Yeah.
.com.
Yeah, and as for us, we really appreciate you. I mean, this is not an easy thing to do. I mean, you're the first potential legislature from Georgia to come and sit here on
Yeah.
the show. I think that right. I mean,
Potential legislator?
No,
Yeah, I guess Matt is already a legislator.
well,
good.
yeah, we
I
had
think
Matt
good.
come on, and we
Nina.
had Nina.
we had
Yeah.
Nina.
So second.
Yeah.
So hey,
I
congratulations.
mean, it was unique to the other previous experiences on podcasts and radio shows because this was very, very interesting in actually asking tough questions that
Yeah.
people should answer.
Yeah, I thank you. Yeah, that's what we pride ourselves on. But thank you for for what you're doing. I think anytime anybody tries to get out there and put forth the effort to run for something like this, that is a big damn deal. To sit here and answer questions, also a big damn deal. So kudos to you for doing that.
And if you know anybody else who is running, who wants to come on, doesn't matter what party they are, even if they have disagreements. Like I'd actually prefer somebody who disagrees completely with me so I can demolish their ideas. I'm kidding. I'd have a honest conversation like I did with anybody. But yeah, Shane.
Yeah, hey,
you
this
want to
has
start
been-
out with some plugs for us?
Yeah, we need all the reviews you guys can get us. If you are a fan of the show, you've listened to more than 5 episodes, we'd really appreciate a little return on that investment. You can go out to Apple Podcasts, where we get most of our reviews. That sends us to the top of the algorithm. So we would really appreciate that. If you'd like to support us financially, you found value in the show, you can go to patreon.com/rebellionpod.
And I have an announcement. At the end of this podcast, Shane is going to approve or not approve certain stickers. Then they will be ordered, and you will get them, sounds like, as a Christmas present.
With the website. And at the end of all of that, if you guys need to bring anything to our attention, you go to info@rebellionpod.com. Send us something there. We'll definitely take a look at it. Maybe we'll post it and even talk about it here on the show. But this has been The Rebellion, your place for peace, liberty, and free markets.
We love you. We need you.
Peace.
Don't hurt people and don't take their stuff.